Hey everybody, welcome back to the Irish Hotspur. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about Djed Spence and why I was wrong about him, why I think he is here to stay. Ange Postecoglou certainly is alluding to that, and why we just don't need a right back. We in fact need something else in that back line this upcoming transfer window. So everybody, let me know in the comments what you may think of my opinions on Djed Spence, why I might have been wrong about him the first time around, and also what you think we still need for that back line in this transfer window. If you can for me, smash that like button and we'll get straight into this video. Now, a report came out today from Bruno Andrade, a Portuguese journalist and expert, at least among, Portuguese/Brazilian players. He is, according to plenty of the Spurs aggregators, a tier one source that Monaco have been preparing for a 40 million euro bid for Vanderson, the AS Monaco Brazilian international. And we did a scout report a little while ago. I did on the player, and there were a lot of things I liked about him. While I don't much believe, though, in this rumor now, and that's because of the recent Djed Spence plaudits by Postecoglou, and also because of the ITKs this season, which in general I just think have gotten a lot of things wrong, and that's just my opinion in general. But I do feel like they haven't really been that trustworthy so far, with a lot of kind of just the contradicting news and whatnot. I really hope that this just isn't true. This recent report from Bruno Andrade, because Djed Spence has impressed me a lot, and I think he's proven me wrong on a few different levels so far this preseason. So in this video, I'm just going to be giving you a bit why I don't think we need Vanderson in general, but also as well why I was wrong about Djed Spence. First, though, we're going to start with why I just don't think we need Vanderson, regardless of the Djed Spence news. And I think it's just because we need someone, in my personal opinion, that's not too similar to Pedro Porro, whereas I actually think Spence is different to Pedro Porro. Vanderson, in my opinion, when I did my scout report, a lot of times I did say that I do think he's pretty similar to a Pedro Porro. He has a good passing range, just like Pedro does. He's defensively kind of poor, where he has some things to work on. That's according to plenty of the stats that we looked into, and also kind of the general vibe of a lot of the reviews from other people who had a look at him in his time at AS Monaco so far. And I really feel like we needed someone who's slightly different to a Pedro Porro. Also, Vanderson is a bit smaller, in terms of build and in terms of size, kind of like Pedro is. And I just really like the idea of having another fullback that is still very attack minded, like Pedro can be, but also has very different attributes in general. And in the case of Spence, I feel like he has more pace. He has a lot more power than Pedro Porro does. He's a lot taller than Pedro does. And when it comes to that pace, he uses it in a few different ways compared to Pedro. He uses it to take it past his man whenever he's carrying the ball, but he also uses it when it comes to that sort of recovery type pace defending. He really does have ridiculous pace to track back and help recover in any case in which we are transitioned on or counterattacked on, which happens a lot in the Ange Postecoglou system, where teams do get in behind us with that really high line. And someone like Djed Spence just has that ridiculous level of speed that's similar to, I think, like a Van de Ven, where it's just the recovery speed and the recovery pace is just so helpful that it really is something that you should have around in your squad and in your team. And then recently, I feel like I've noticed that Djed Spence, and probably something I've never gave him much credit for in the past, was that he does have a really strong tackle in him when he is defensively focused, and when he is playing well defensively. He has a much stronger tackle, at least that's the appearance of it so far this preseason, than maybe Pedro Porro does. We often do see Pedro kind of get caught maybe kind of in the wrong area, or doesn't really know when to press forward. And as Djed Spence just kind of comes off as a tad bit more aggressive than Pedro does. And we know he's taller, he's probably a bit stronger than Pedro. And I think that actually serves well for him as just a different type of kind of defending style, if you will. And also, when it comes to dribbling, he has a very different style to Pedro Porro. He kind of prefers to carry it past his man. He really likes to take it past his man, oftentimes, Djed Spence, whereas Pedro Porro will opt more, I think, for that clever bit of technique and passing range to move his way up the pitch, as well as move the team up the pitch. Whereas Djed Spence can just do it on his own with just a bit of skill, and then he also has that confidence to then take it past another player afterwards. So I like the fact that Spence almost prefers to dribble it or take it past his man by carrying it, whereas Pedro Porro might prefer to get up the pitch by actually using kind of a bit of genius passing, or find that player that maybe others wouldn't be able to find in the build-up play. So I just like the fact that when it comes to build-up play, you're going to get two very different things with those two players. And then another reason for why I just don't think we need Vanderson is that we need a left back. I mean, Davies, in my opinion, is no longer capable of serving as a fullback, and I think that's regardless of the system, even if it wasn't this Ange Postecoglou system in the modern game as a fullback, especially on kind of these attack-minded type of teams. You need someone who can get up and down, who can be a threat going forward, which I don't think Davies is. But then you also need someone who can have that recovery pace and can get back as well, which I just don't think Davies does. I think Davies oftentimes in the fullback position gets really caught in no man's land. I even remember in that Crystal Palace game where Van de Ven, I felt like was doing a lot of the defending for him. Anytime that Crystal Palace got the ball, it felt like they were just trying to play it in behind Ben Davies, and Van de Ven had to do a lot of the recovery defending for him just because Ben Davies just doesn't have that pace in his game any longer, if he never really did. And when it's Spence, who I think is a very serviceable right back to compete with Pedro Porro, I just don't think it's fair on him, nor do I think he really can play that left back position. I think he struggles with the mechanics of it defensively in that most recent game against Bayern Munich. I just thought you could tell that, his body positioning and, kind of sort of the technical aspects of, how to position yourself defensively, he did struggle with because it kind of can be the complete opposite when you're on the other side. And he does tend to struggle with those kind of balls over the top / balls in behind him. I know I just mentioned that he has that great recovery pace that sometimes you do see in Spence's game where he kind of can't just be face forward and he doesn't really have a total full concept of what's behind him, or if there is someone who is trying to sneak in behind him, usually he can recover and get back there. But in that Bayern Munich game, that did kind of remind me of some of the things that I've seen of him in the past when he was over on loan at Rennes and as well as Genoa, where he can, get caught with that ball over the top or that ball in behind. And, he's a very serviceable right back. He doesn't need to be able to play both sides. And also, when it comes to Jamie Donnelly, I just think it's unfair to try to play Jamie Donnelly as a backup left back to Udogie. I know Jamie Donnelly wants to get whatever minutes he can, but coming up against real proper wingers in the Premier League who are very, very good at taking on their fullback, I just don't know if Jamie Donnelly is really a serviceable player to play there because he's trained his whole life as a number 10 and in other positions as well across the forward line. So it just doesn't really feel like it's that fair on the guy to try to learn on the go like that. And Udogie, we know, needs backup. He will need rest. The way he exerts himself going up and down, just his whole kind of all action nature as a fullback, that does need, a rest, and that will need someone who will need breaks throughout the season. And so we need someone who is, I think, slightly different to Udogie, like I brought up earlier in the case of Pedro Porro, but then can still offer some of those athletic traits and some of that ability to get up and down and, be strong defensively like Udogie can. Personally, if I were to just offer a quick suggestion that I have said in the past for an Udogie competition / backup, I actually really have liked Ryan Ait-Nouri over at Wolves just because I think he's really good coming inside. He can play in the midfield or at least, kind of move in there. He has a great ball carrying ability, has just really good, tech and kind of a flair to his game as well. A very techie player, if I may add. And I like the fact that I think Gary O'Neill, one of my soft spot managers, has been able to use him at a variety of positions. He's played everywhere. I felt like last season, from playing up top to playing left wing to playing in midfield to playing as a left back. So I do really like the idea of Ryan Ait-Nouri, coming to Spurs and being that competition for Udogie for being slightly different to him, but also having a lot of similar attributes. But I don't really think that'd be that possible, really, this upcoming season. But let's go into maybe why I was wrong about Djed Spence. First of all, I would say that he's really improved his attitude. And I did kind of say that maybe his attitude was a problem in the past, or maybe why it didn't work out under an Antonio Conte. And I feel like now with hindsight, I should have probably just blamed Conte and Daniel Levy more than I really did Djed Spence. I think he's been used as a pawn in kind of a transfer politics game between Antonio Conte as well as Daniel Levy, where Daniel Levy brought him in as a homegrown competition for someone like Emerson, as well as some of the other fullbacks that we had, like Doherty, in the team. But Djed Spence clearly just did, or sorry, Antonio Conte just clearly did not trust younger players and didn't trust guys that he felt like weren't proven at least a higher level. And Djed Spence at the time, I think you could say that would be true, but it's also on Conte for having, in my opinion, such a stubborn mindset when it came to that. And so then I felt bad for Djed Spence now with the benefit of hindsight, that he was used as a pawn in this whole transfer political game between Conte and Levy. And I ended up kind of blaming Djed Spence more for just his attitude in that whole process instead of just looking towards the others in the situation. And I think recently it looks like he has been improving a little bit defensively. Like I said, he looks stronger in the tackle. Looks like he's a bit more aggressive than maybe he might have been in the past. And, that's because I did watch a couple of his games for Rennes as well as for Genoa when I could. And you can tell that he's been working on some of his defensive elements of his game, which I think always was one of the weaker sides. And I don't think I gave him enough credit that he even could improve, right? Sometimes we do make our minds up on players. We end up thinking that that's what you're going to get. They're not going to be able to work on some of their weaknesses. And I think he certainly has done. And I didn't give him that credit that he could do that. And I also forgot how good of a dribbler this guy is and how good of a dribbler he can be. I sort of said it originally in my scout report when we first brought him in from Middlesbrough and during his Forest loan spell, but I don't think I can really give myself that much credit in that regard because I kind of forgot how good of a dribbler he can be, especially in a system like this where that freedom of expression just to take on your man, kind of cause that chaos, be able to make fullbacks as well as opposition defenders really think about you. I forgot that Djed Spence can do that. He can take it inside. He can go any which direction he pleases, but he knows how to be able to confidently try to take on his man and create things from there with his own 2 feet by just taking it past his man. So I really didn't give him that credit that I probably should have. That is a really important attribute in his game. And something I didn't consider at the time that Djed Spence certainly has done that I should have probably thought about originally is that Djed Spence has taken control of his career. He's risen above the challenges that have been presented to him, when it comes to Antonio Conte and when it comes to the fact that that dude pretty much tried his best to crush his confidence. Looks like Djed Spence has gotten over that or at least tried to rise above that and hasn't really been that petty about it or anything like that. And also when you look at Daniel Levy, right, using him as a political pawn in a transfer kind of game between him and the manager Conte, but also kind of just probably brought him in for just the homegrown reasons, to fill a gap. And Djed Spence probably started to realize that, but now I think has, by the looks of things, gotten over that, and he's taken control of his own career. And actually, Ange Postecoglou more or less says the same here and actually would agree with that. And with his recent quotes, he said, to be fair to him, I think he's been very, very good for us this preseason in terms of the way he's trained and with his general attitude. But a lot of these things are in the players' hands themselves. They kind of decide their own future in many respects, said Ange Postecoglou. And I think Djed Spence is actually in that boat. He then went on to say, I think there's an opportunity for him here. For sure, thinking about building a squad, he would definitely be somebody who could contribute with the attributes that he has. I thought last year there was a chance, but it didn't quite work out for him. For those kinds of things, I think sometimes players really wait for direction when they really can actually take control of their own direction. He then went on to say that Jed's here, he's a Spurs player, he's a very good player who fits into our football. Maybe he's learned a couple of things over the last couple of years about himself, and hopefully we can sort of bear the fruit of that. Now, sometimes I feel like when things go wrong in life for you, it is, often quite easy to just blame, the others instead of, kind of looking inward and kind of looking at yourself. In some cases, maybe you were responsible for certain things. And even if you weren't responsible for certain things that you feel like aren't really entirely your fault, it can be really easy just to give those excuses to yourself without perhaps taking the high road and rising above the adversity and the challenges that have been presented to you. There are plenty of things in life that just aren't fair, right? Where you aren't really given a fair shake or you're not given the right deck of cards to succeed. But plenty of people, what they do is eventually they kind of just come to terms with that and accept that they've been given a raw deal, and they still find a way to take the high road and rise above the adversity and the challenges that have been shown to them. And I think Djed Spence has done that here with the past of Antonio Conte, with the Daniel Levy situation, and also the fact that Ange Postecoglou, even the first time around, didn't really see much in him, right? He sent him out on loan, and it didn't look like Djed Spence had much of a career here anymore. And oftentimes, I feel like no matter how bad something can get, a lot of things can still be within your control, right? Or even, you at least can try to control what you can to the best of your ability. And I think Spence has done that here. He's worked hard. He's clearly focused on his game. He's clearly motivated now, and he's pushing himself even after what Ange did. Ange actually sent him out on loan and pretty much got rid of him the first time around, and he's risen above all of that. He could have easily wanted, I think, a move away from this club, but he decided to face the noise. He decided to face the challenges that have been presented to him here. And he's shown that he wants to succeed and that he wants to take control, wants to take his career back. And I just want to say fair play to him. So, on a number of levels, I feel like Djed Spence, has proven me wrong. Probably he's proven some other people wrong. And to a degree, I probably owe him an apology. And if I ever were able to, catch a game in person in this next season, I'd be happy to probably scream that from the stands, Jedi, I'm sorry. But let me know in this video, everybody, what you think of this recent rumor with Vanderson. I just really hope it isn't true and that this isn't happening. I think for the most part it isn't. And kind of used it basically as, fuel to talk about why I think Djed Spence has really impressed me. He's impressed Postecoglou, and why I think he's probably proven people like myself wrong with, criticisms that we might have had of him in the past before basically an Ange Postecoglou had a second look on him. So a lot of this is with the benefit of hindsight, but sometimes it's good to go back and, check on maybe what you might have gotten wrong, with all the various opinions that I've expressed, as well as plenty of other people have expressed on this channel. But everybody, if you can for me, get in those comments below, smash that like button, and let me know what you think of Djed Spence, and let me know what you may think we still need in the back line, because certainly we should not be going after right backs. We should be going after left backs. I'll be seeing you.